Hi friends! So in my last vlog video, I talked about how I have been reading up a storm lately, so I thought I would show you some of the books that I have been reading. Here we go. Oh, and yes, this is my new hair and the new glasses, so I don't know what this means. Jazz hands, woo! Anyway, on with the books. So the first book that I read is a book called Branded, Sharing Jesus with a Consumer Culture. So I've had this book on my bookshelf for quite some time. It's actually written by a guy who is he was the radio host for the morning show on the Christian radio station that I listened to. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, so I wasn't sure if I was going to like this book. That's probably why it sat on my shelf for like 3 years before I read it. Because typically I do not agree with focus on the family. I think they should focus on their own families. And so I was a little bit nervous, like, what's this going to be about? But the concept of branding Jesus as a consumer product was kind of interesting. So it's a really short book. I think it's only like 120 pages. The first 12 chapters of the book, not such a big fan, but it got better. So the first part of the book talks really about how Christians have been marketing Jesus in the very same way for a long time, and it's kind of an off-putting way, and it's not really working. Like fire and brimstone is not really a good way to go about it for most folks. So that was kind of interesting. So the start of the book, I actually learned a great deal more about marketing and the strategies and how that works, and there were some interesting parallels that were drawn that I thought was good. But most of the start of the book, I felt like it sort of just left these open-ended questions, which I think was the point. But nothing really went very deep. It was kind of these, I don't know, like these stories of, there was a lot of alliteration or whatever, and it was very clever. Parts of it were very clever, and parts of it were really like funny. There was a line in here about not getting your choir robes in a bunch, which I thought was funny, because it is funny. But my favorite part of the book and what I thought was good is in the beginning, where it talks about your beliefs, and it says belief doesn't necessarily make you right, but it does make you authentic. That's something that I strive to be in my life, is to be an authentic person. So I thought that was good. Another thing that I learned from this book, and I don't know why I didn't really think of this before, but it makes mention of this little piggy going to market, and then it talks about how, well, the pig's not going shopping, and then apparently my world was rocked. I was like, what do you mean the pig is not going shopping? He's gonna die? So that was life-changing for me. Thanks there on that book. Anyway, but my very favorite part of the book is actually the last chapter, and it almost felt like the last chapter was written by somebody totally different, where there wasn't this regard for like, oh, what is mainstream Christianity gonna think? And I can never say this on my radio show. Anyway, but the last chapter is called What If, and it brings up all these questions about what if Christians did this instead of what we've always been doing. And some of my favorite suggestions on here were, what if you only had to pray about yourself? And what if you couldn't pray about like your health or travel mercies or things like that? Like, what if you actually had to pray about things that were deep down issues that matter to you? What if that was all you could pray about? So I thought that was interesting. My favorite suggestion was, what if instead of asking your non-believer friends to come to church with you all the time, what if you actually just went to the bar with them, which I'm a fan of going to the bar. So ideas kind of like that I thought were really good. So I like this book. Here we go. Branded. Plus I think this is kind of cute, like, because sometimes people get a little bit uber Christian with the fish and woo and the WWJD bracelet and all this, so I thought this was a cute little graphic. Anyway, but yeah, it was a good book. Locked it. The next book I read was a suggestion from my mother. She gave me this book, and it's called Memoirs of an Imaginary Friend by Matthew Dix, and this book was so good. I had never read anything like it, so it's rare when you find a novel that has a storyline or a concept that you've never heard of before. And the concept behind this book is it is the memoir of an imaginary friend, so it's written from the point of view of this child's imaginary friend, and so it kind of talks about his rules and how he goes through his existence or his life. And I like it says on the back, it says, I am not imaginary. And so Buddo is the imaginary friend, and he kind of helps his human person along through life, and he meets some other imaginary friends. And the thing is, imaginary friends can only exist as long as their human friend believes in them. And so when a child stops believing, the imaginary friend vanishes or starts to disappear. And it was so interesting because it talked about how the imaginary friend was everything that his person had imagined him to be, but sometimes he had to help him make decisions or do different things. And so this book is so good. I'd never read anything like it. It was an interesting concept, and how for his own survival, the imaginary friend kind of needs his human to remain childlike and not grow up and still believe in him and still depend on him, but how that's actually not good. The human friend needed to grow up and stop believing and sort of take care of himself. So there's some struggles that go along in there. This book, I cried at the end of this book. It was a lot, but it was so good. So I highly recommend it. It was a really quick read, and it was really interesting. So, and you kind of get invested in the imaginary friend. You want him to stick around, even though you know that, like, for the kid's best interest, he has to kind of give it up. So really cute, really funny. There's a funny part in here about, there's a fairy imaginary friend, and she has some funny lines. She says, well, nobody's gonna punch a fairy. That would just make you a jerk. And so really cute. I liked it. Good suggestion, Mama. As per usual, she had a good one. The last book that I read is called All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. Here it is. I did not like this book. Well, I liked part of it. I was going along. So let me read you what it says in the cover here. It says, Theodore Finch is fascinated by death. Every day he thinks of ways he might die, but every day he also searches for and manages to find something to keep him here and alive and awake. Violet Markey lives for the future, counting the days until graduation, when she can escape her small Indiana town and her aching grief in the wake of her sister's death. So it's kind of, I think this is kind of like a teen book or something, or like a young adult novel or whatever. Sometimes I accidentally buy those. Oops. So obviously the two characters meet, they have a love interest, whatever. And so it's very cute. The end of this book is terrible. So spoiler alert, one of the characters dies, which, fine, whatever. But I think that this book did a terrible job of addressing the issues of mental health and teen suicide, because those are very serious issues and they do happen, and it's fine to write a book and to talk about it honestly. But this book, I felt, totally romanticized and glorified teen suicide. It didn't really talk about the issue. Like, if anything, the book kind of ended and it said, oh, well, it's fine because now this he'll never be forgotten and he has all this freedom and his true memory and essence and spirit, which I think is not a good way to look at it, because that really just makes it seem like this romantic notion or gesture of like, oh, they met and they fell in love. I mean, it's not Romeo and Juliet. There's nothing really romantic or lovely or to be glorified about teen suicide. So that was it was kind of a bummer. But up until that point, the book was really cute. I liked that each chapter kind of alternated between the viewpoints. So one chapter was told from Finch's perspective, and one chapter was told from Violet's perspective. So I liked that way of telling the story. But I just thought that the ending was a bit of a cop-out. It could have been better, or it could have, like, if you're gonna write a book about such a serious topic, do all your research, write it correctly. Don't just sort of, have some fluff about the issue at the end. So I didn't not a fan at all. But what can you do? Can't like them all. So yeah, so those are the 3 books that I have completed recently. I'm currently reading a book called The Witness Wore Red, about the fundamental Latter-day Saints. Yes, the fundamental Mormons. It's interesting. I'm almost done with that one. So yeah, I hope that you liked hearing about some of the books that I've read. I will put links to all of them down below so you can check them out, buy them on Amazon if you want, or whatever. That's cool. And let me know what books y'all are reading if you want, and maybe I will keep doing this. I don't know. But I hope y'all had a great day.